There are hundreds of games out there trying to be Dark Souls. Most of them copy the homework and still get the answers wrong. They've got the bonfires, the stamina bar, the "you died" screen, and somehow none of it feels right. Then, in 2023, a small Korean studio you've probably never heard of, Round 8 Studio, took the most unlikely source material on the planet, Pinocchio, and built something that critics, players, and even FromSoftware's own rivals now point to as the best Souls-like that FromSoftware didn't make. Not pretty good for a clone, not decent attempt, the best. So today, I want to actually break down why that claim holds up, what Lies of P gets right, where it genuinely struggles, and why a DLC that came out 2 years later turned this from really good game into best Souls-like ever made territory for a lot of people. First thing, the setting. Lies of P drops you into Krat, a fictional Belle Epoque city that's basically what you'd get if you slammed together 1900s Paris and a steampunk nightmare. Gas lamps, cobblestone streets, grand opera houses, and every single living thing in it has either turned into a homicidal puppet or is dying from a disease called petrification. This matters more than people give it credit for. A lot of Souls-likes just throw you into generic dark fantasy kingdom number 47. Krat actually has a personality. The ruined city, the swamps, the collapsed puppet factories, they're not just pretty backdrops. They tell you the story of what happened here before you even read a single item description. And the Pinocchio angle isn't a gimmick either. You're playing as P, a puppet built by Geppetto, trying to find him in a city that's fallen apart. The original fairy tale is dark if you actually go back and read it. Kids get turned into donkeys, Pinocchio straight up kills the talking cricket in the first chapter. Round 8 leaned into that darkness instead of running from it, and that's exactly why it works.
Okay, combat. Because this is where most Souls-like clones fall apart, and it's also where Lies of P does something genuinely different. The big one is the weapon assembly system. Every weapon in this game is built from 2 parts, a blade and a handle, and you can mix and match them at a workbench however you want. Take a greatsword blade, stick it on a dagger handle, and now you've got a weapon that moves fast but hits like a truck. Each blade and handle also carries its own fable art, basically a special hoove, like Elden Ring's Ashes of War. So you're not just picking a weapon, you're designing one. Then there's the Legion arm. P has a mechanical prosthetic arm that gets swapped out across the game, 8 different ones by the end, and each one gives you a completely different tool. One pulls enemies toward you like Sekiro's grappling hook, one's basically a flamethrower, one's a giant fist. It adds this whole second layer of combat that most parry-focused Souls-likes don't even attempt. And speaking of parrying, perfect guard is the backbone of this game's combat. Block at the right moment, chip away at the enemy's weapon durability, and eventually you break their weapon entirely and get a free, massive damage window. It's clearly inspired by Sekiro's deflect system, and most critics agree it gets impressively close. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's flawless because that's not what this channel does. Some reviewers, fair ones, pointed out that the parry timing can feel a little stiff compared to Sekiro or Bloodborne, slightly less satisfying, a bit more rigid in the animation. And that's a fair hit, but here's the thing. Even critics making that exact criticism still called the overall combat one of the best in any recent Souls-like not made by FromSoftware or Team Ninja. That's the bar this game is being measured against, and it's still clearing it.
On top of weapons and the arm, you've got the P organ, basically P's internal skill tree, unlocked once you rescue Geppetto early in the story. You sit in his chair, spend quartz, and unlock passive upgrades. Bigger stagger windows, faster guard recovery, extra Legion arm slots later on. What I like about this system is it doesn't just make you stronger in a flat numbers way, it changes how you're allowed to play. Want to lean into aggressive parry everything gameplay? There's a built path for that. Want to play it safer with guard regain and survivability? That's there too. It gives the same kind of build freedom you'd expect from an actual FromSoftware game, not a watered down version of it. Here's the part that I think genuinely separates Lies of P from every other Souls-like trying to copy the formula. And it's not combat, it's the lie system. Throughout the game, NPCs ask P questions, and you choose whether to tell the truth or lie. According to the in-game lore, puppets aren't supposed to be able to lie at all. Only P can, because of how Geppetto built him. And every time you do lie, something physically changes. His internal gears react. Later, his hair starts growing like an actual human's. The game even shifts its internal text. It starts as your springs are reacting, then becomes the ergo is whispering, then finally, you feel warmth. That's not a side gimmick. That's the entire theme of the game wrapped into a mechanic. The whole point of Lies of P is the question, what makes someone human? And instead of just telling you that through cutscenes, the game makes you choose it scene by scene. And your choices physically transform the character on screen. It leads to 3 main endings, plus a secret one tied to the DLC. And depending on how much humanity you've built up, you get wildly different outcomes. One of them is genuinely one of the darker endings I've seen in this entire genre. I won't spoil it here, but if you finish the game, you know exactly which one I mean. No other major Souls-like, not Neo, not Wulong, not Code Vein, has built its core narrative mechanic this directly into moment-to-moment gameplay.
Now here's where the story gets interesting, because Lies of P didn't lock in this reputation at launch, it locked it in 2 years later. In June 2025, Round 8 dropped Lies of P Overture, a prequel DLC that added 15 to 20 hours of content, and the reaction to it was massive. It won Best Game Expansion at the Golden Joystick Awards 2025, plus DLC of the Year at the Ultra Game Awards. Director Choi Chi-won said in interviews afterward that the team never treated Overture as just an expansion. They built it like a second full game. And the impact wasn't just critical, it was commercial. Neowiz's own Q4 2025 earnings report confirmed Lies of P has now sold over 4 million units total, and that Overture's launch triggered what they called a second wave of popularity for the entire game. People who'd already finished it once came back. New players picked it up because of the DLC buzz. That's incredibly rare for a single-player game 2 years after release. This is honestly why you're seeing so many players online, not just critics, saying flat out that Lies of P combined with Overture is the best Souls-like ever made, FromSoftware included. I'm not going to tell you that's an objective fact, but the fact that this argument is even being made seriously 2 years after launch about a game from a studio nobody trusted going in, that tells you everything.
Let's be real for a second about what it's actually up against. Neo has incredible combat depth, but a loot system that pulls it more toward Diablo than Dark Souls. Wulong is fun, but never escapes feeling like Neo in China. Code Vein has style, but combat that a lot of people find too easy and too forgiving. And Black Myth Wukong, as much as people love throwing it into this conversation, isn't really a Souls-like at all. It's an action RPG with a totally different structure and difficulty philosophy. Lies of P is the one game in that entire lineup that critics consistently say could pass as an actual FromSoftware title if you didn't tell them otherwise. That's the highest compliment this genre can give, and it's been said by multiple outlets independently, not just one outlet's opinion that everyone else copied.
And this isn't a one-and-done success story either. A full sequel is already confirmed to be in development. It was announced back in November 2023, just 2 months after the original launched, and Choi Ji-won has stayed on as director. As of the team's most recent comments, they're stating tight-lipped on details, but Choi's exact words were, "Please stay tuned for it. We are working really hard, and I will not disappoint you at all." Given that the original game went from green light to release in roughly 3 years, and pre-production on the sequel was likely already underway before Overture even shipped, this isn't some distant rumor. This is a studio actively building on a franchise that just proved it can compete with the genre's creator. So when people ask me what the best Souls-like outside of FromSoftware is, I don't hesitate anymore. It's Lies of P. Not because it copies the formula well, plenty of teams do that, but because it took the formula, added a genuinely original narrative mechanic, backed it up with one of the best DLCs this genre has ever seen, and earned every bit of that reputation the hard way. If you haven't played it yet, now's actually the perfect time. With Overture included, you're getting the full, complete version of what might be this generation's most underrated action RPG. Let me know in the comments, what's your pick for best non-FromSoftware Soulslike? I want to see if anyone can actually change my mind.